Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is refusing to say exactly who within the Labour Party assured her there was no sexual assault complaint. Nigel Haworth resigned as Labour Party president yesterday amid mounting pressure over the party's handling of complaints against a Labour staffer. But the former president maintains no sexual assault allegations were put before the investigation panel. That panel was made up of 3 senior members of the Labour Party, among them Tracey McLellan, who, following Haworth's departure, is now the party's highest-ranking official. However, at least 2 complainants say they did tell the panel of the serious allegations, and one of the complainants says he outlined the sexual assault allegations in a face-to-face meeting with Nigel Haworth. Today, our reporter Alex Perrottet put a number of unanswered questions to the Prime Minister.
What I am here acknowledging today as the leader is that we have work to do, and I won't deny that. In fact, that's been an issue the party has had to acknowledge over the past year, and it's now very, very clear the areas where that work is most needed.
You sought reassurances from your party, as you say, about 5 weeks ago that there wasn't a sexual assault complaint. Who exactly did you seek those reassurances from? Again,
I do want to acknowledge that we will have a QC process that is going to enable us as a party to look at areas where we have failed in this process.
But who did you speak to, Prime Minister?
And I do want to allow that process to run its course. As you would expect in seeking reassurances, I would, of course, seek reassurances from senior leadership, and that is what I did.
Was it just the President?
If I could just finalise my answer. Obviously, alongside seeking reassurances, I also attended New Zealand Council. It was my strong view at that time that regardless of the reassurances I was receiving from the party, the process just was inadequate. It was obviously not meeting the needs of complainants. That's when the QC was brought in, and that was obviously some 5 weeks ago.
But was it just Nigel Haworth that you sought assurances from, or were there other people in the party?
As I've said, it was senior leadership. I do want to again, though, make sure that the QC process is able to run its course. You know, that's going to look into everything that occurred in this case, where we have let those complainants down, what could and should have been done. And I also want to emphasise that 5 weeks ago it became very clear the party is not equipped to deal with situations like this, and so they won't investigate complaints of this nature again. Well, at that time, obviously some 5 weeks ago, complaints were being made about the process itself, and obviously at that point it had clearly failed, and that's why the QC was brought in to provide that third party, to provide that reassurance to those who were involved. Since that time, I've seen documentation myself that demonstrate to me the distress this process has caused, and that's why you've seen the action I've taken over the last 48 hours.
So were you misled by the senior leadership of the party?
Again, obviously yesterday I had a conversation with the president of the party. He continues to maintain the position he always has, but in my view, this process as a whole has caused harm. There is no doubt of that, and that is why we've given, I have given an apology to those involved, and why I also given assurance we will not have the party investigating situations like this internally ever again.
Have you spoken to the 3 council members who heard the complaints? That's members Heaney, McLellan and Mitchell. Have you spoken to them directly about the complaints?
I want to just exercise some caution here. We have brought in a QC to look into the process. So rather than having me undertake that exercise, I want to give some comfort to those who have been involved by having a third party do it. And I think that's much more likely to meet their expectations.
If it does turn out that Grant Robertson and others, senior in the party, knew that the allegations were of a sexual nature, what consequences will there be? Again,
I'm going to let this process allow the QC to do this job. I don't think it is for me to go in and inquire personally when actually at this point the failing for these complainants has been that the party just hasn't managed this well at all. The best thing I can do is oversee a process they can have some faith in. That's why the QC's been brought in, and I do want to let that run its course.
The punishment for the President is that he has already resigned. Is there a similar punishment for those who later have found out that they knew as well?
Again, I don't want to get ahead of that process, and I don't want to make any predeterminations. What I did make a clear decision on yesterday was, from what I'd seen, the process that the party, even if they entered into that with good faith and with good intentions. Regardless of that, it's obvious that it's caused harm. That's very, very clear, and it'll be clear to anyone to see that. And so that is why I had the conversation with the President yesterday, and that has obviously resulted in him offering his resignation.
So what are the terms of reference for the QC?
Yeah, those are currently being finalised in conjunction with complainants. That's obviously an important part of the process. I've set an expectation that it needs to allow the full process that's been involved to date to be covered by the QC. But obviously complainants are involved in that, as I understand.
So have those terms changed since the new information's come to light?
I've sought reassurance that they're broad enough in scope to cover what needs to be covered and to satisfy the complainant's needs, and that's currently in train.
Who's in charge of the Labor Party now Nigel Haworth has gone?
By the rules of the Labor Party, defaults to the Senior Vice President. That is only a temporary position until the role is balloted, and there's a time frame set around that.
So that's Tracey McLellan?
That is by our rule book. That is where it defaults to. I do want, those are matters though for the New Zealand Council. Again, it is a balloted process. The holding of that role is a temporary one.
I just want to ask, how appropriate is it that the person now leading the acting president of the party was one of the three members who heard those allegations?
Again, just to be clear, that's obviously an automated process, really. So that defaults to our Senior Vice President. It would be a decision for New Zealand Council if there was any alternative to that.
But are you happy with the arrangement?
And just again, to highlight, this is very temporary. There's only a matter of the weeks required to ballot members, and then, of course, a new president is put in place. New Zealand Council could make alternative arrangements, as I understand. They haven't met yet. So this, at the present point in time, our Senior Vice President holds the role until a new president is elected.
Just as you spoke to Nigel Haworth about what he knew, have you spoken to Tracey McLellan about what she knew?
Again, it is not my role at this point to go and pick through the details, the testimony, the written material that's being provided. My role is to make sure that we provide a process complainants can have faith in. I think if we continue to keep this within the Labor Party, we won't succeed with that.
And that's the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern in Hamilton speaking to our reporter Alex Perrottet.